When done properly, the internet, screens, and particularly social media can provide 5 essential elements of adolescent well-being: a sense of control over one's environment, individuation, self-expression, a connection to others, and acceptance. And then there is the abyss. Welcome to App-Propriate, a podcast designed to give you a little taste into the positives and negatives of the most popular social media apps, so that you and your most importants can make more informed, healthy, and safer choices when it comes to interacting through your screens. I'm your host, Joe Langford. Note that I said safer, not safe. Interacting through screens with other humans contains a degree of natural risk, just like real life. And I believe that education leads to empowerment, and I hope this information helps add a degree of safety, social responsibility, and good digital citizenship to your social networking and the conversations you have about it with your family. Today's episode is about text messaging. Text apps are typically standard on most every phone, do not come with any age restrictions, and are relatively safe for kids and relatively easy for parents to monitor. If your child has their own phone, you may have noticed that they carry it everywhere. For many teens and adults, the smartphone is considered a lifeline to the world and the people in it, with texting being the primary mode of communication today. The cell phone has dramatically changed the way we interact with each other. And even though the current concept of a smartphone is only about 15 years old, texting has been around since the early 90s. Anyone listening remember T9 texting? When we spelled the word B with the letter B, and it took 15 buttons to write the word hello because we had to press the numbers on the phone pad a specific number of times to get each letter, like animals. Now texting is considered ubiquitous. Even old people and little kids text. There are now more people in the world who send text messages than who have electricity in their homes. In fact, statistically, 97% of smartphone owners text regularly, and many people report that texting is their primary means of communication. This is particularly true for teens who almost never hold their phones to their face and actually say words to anyone other than Siri. It's actually kind of weird that we still call those devices phones. The average Westerner sends and receives 2,819 text messages a month, which averages out to almost 100 texts per day, and collectively, we are up to around 200,000 texts per second. Texting is just one of the many things that we can do with our devices, and for some people, kids especially, those options can become overused and overwhelming. If you're among the many parents who struggle with helping their kid keep balance and boundaries with their communications, here's some tips for parenting around texting. Set rules and expectations. Kids cannot be expected to autopilot into a controlled and conservative philosophy around screens. We have to teach and model this. Kids do not typically head out on a Saturday morning to spend the day out and about in the world with their friends the way some of us did growing up. And we set it up that way when we invented scheduled one-on-one playdates, stopped sending kids to our neighborhood schools, loaded them up with after-school activities, and quit taking them trick-or-treating. Texting has replaced that in a very real way as the primary way that kids contact and connect with their friends, and the bulk of their intimate interactions take place through their screens. In service of that teaching and modeling, we need to identify times when texting is not appropriate or ideal. This, of course, includes things like while driving, at the dinner table, or when they're having an actual conversation with another human, or doing homework. But it also needs to include things like sharing big news, asking someone on a date, breaking up with someone or saying thank you, happy birthday, or I'm sorry. Socially, some things are better when done in person, or at least over the phone, rather than in a text. And it's important to explain why these boundaries are nice and/or necessary. The ideal time to establish rules around how the phone will be monitored is at the very beginning, when you first give it to your kid. It's easier to relax the rules as you go along rather than suddenly introduce new ones, though it's never too late. We want to monitor their behavior. If you've heard me speak on this before, you know that I'm a fan of parental monitoring of screen behavior. Mostly, this is in service of social media and search behavior, but can apply to text as well. If your kid has attention issues, is not great with the self-control, and or you find that your child is sending or receiving inappropriate messages, there are loads of apps to help keep track of what your child is doing. Note that I said monitor, not spy. We don't want to set up a system where we're just skulking around waiting for our kids to screw up. We want them to build muscles of responsibility and self-control through understanding that they have an audience. Plus, what do you do if you find something? How do you bring it up without disclosing that you've been big brothering them? One question I often get around this is whether it's okay to read your kids' text messages. There's not one right answer. It depends on their age, personality, and behavior, and your family's values. For some families, it's the price of admission for having a device with texting capabilities. For other parents, they don't give it a lick of thought until when and if something bad happens. Although older teens need a sense of independence and privacy, parents are ultimately responsible for their well-being, and I recommend some level of monitoring for most kids until at least age 16. When concerned, I encourage parents to ask their kids about their texting habits. How many texts do they send in a day? To whom? Do they think texting interferes with other important parts of their lives, like friendships, homework, or us? Their answers to these questions will not only help you discover where they are in terms of thinking in a meta way about their own behavior, but can also help begin a dialogue about it. In that same vein, express any concerns you have about the amount of texting they're doing and how you see it impacting their relationships and responsibilities. Then listen to their perspective. It may not be the same as yours, it may not even be very insightful, but the conversations will go better and be more likely to happen if you can acknowledge their viewpoint, even if you disagree. Teens are trying to balance out more and more grown-up responsibilities while still being dependent on us, and holding two developmental stages at the same time is challenging for everyone. If you have reason to believe that your kid is behaving irresponsibly or dangerously in terms of their texting behavior, consider using parental controls to limit the times they're able to send and receive texts. Swapping an unlimited data plan with a plan with a limit threshold, or simply removing their device for a period of time to create more accountability for their choices and motivation for mature future behavior. I spend a lot of time with teenagers, and I'm privileged to witness the impacts of technology on adolescent behavior, both the good and the bad. The bad, of course, get the bulk of the attention, but there's a lot of good out there as well. Adolescence is a time for kids to start learning about themselves and how to interact with the rest of the world. It can be both a beautiful and ugly transformative period in the mental and emotional development of our children, one in which they begin practicing and priming the muscles of capacity, capability, and confidence that they hopefully carry on with the rest of their lives. Previous generations had to reinvent a lot of their own wheels, learn from a lot of mistakes and trial and error. Today's teens are no different, but through technological advancements, even simple ones like texting, many teens stay in contact and conversation with their parents in a way that was not nearly so simple or seamless for previous generations. In learning moments, kids can reach out, often in real time, for feedback, validation, help, or a high five. And parents can respond with understanding, encouragement, empathy, and emojis. With all the fears and panic bait about how tech robs children of the opportunity or obligation to live their lives and rise to challenges, technology also enables this most current cohort of young people unique and powerful ways to meet life's ups and downs, access resources and responsibility, and stay in contact and communication so much easier than the rest of us had it. Texting with our children reaches out to them on their level, with their language, and allows us to give our kids reminds, escape hatches, and little love notes if and when they need them. Texting can also help them communicate hard stuff because sometimes it's easier to ask or confess or bring up a topic remotely rather than face-to-face. Texting can be used to approach sensitive and scary subjects in a safe way while paving the way for later in-person discussions. But the biggest benefit will simply be the connection. Whether it's a hard conversation, an I love you dad note, or an occasional scrolling GIF war, as our kids grow and become adults themselves, they will be way more likely down the road to text us than to call us and talk to us with their actual voices. And building that relationship with them now will pay off down the road. If we work to guide our children through the tween and teen years with a few basic rules about even the simplest aspects of tech, such as texting, keep open communication, random checks, and a general awareness of what they're doing on their phones and with whom, and joining them in that use whenever we can empower them to become independent individuals while staying involved in their lives in a connected and consistent way. Thank you for listening. I'm Joe Langford. I'm a therapist, a sex and tech educator, and a dad, and I specialize in helping families navigate that intersection of adolescence, sexuality, technology, and behavior. More information about me and my work to promote healthy, positive, and safer sexual and social behavior, both online and off, can be found at my website, beheroes.net.
The advice presented in this podcast is a form of education and is intended to provide general information about common though broad topics that impact underage people. Specific circumstances and facts may make said advice unsuitable and/or other actions necessary for individuals. This podcast is meant to be an adjunct, not a replacement, for IRL experience, professional advice, and good old-fashioned common sense. In addition, much of the information included here can and most likely will change with time, culture, and the rapid development of technology. Beheroes.net does not seek nor accept any monetary gain or financial support from any social media platform mentioned. Beheroes.net is committed to providing quality consulting, coaching, product, speaker, and contracted therapeutic services, advocacy, and resources to clients, visitors, customers, colleagues, and fans. Appropriate is produced by Beheroes.net.